Now, the next topic that I'd like to talk about is something that is very, very, like so far out there, and it has to do with transitioning from one gender to another. That's another thing that we've just been sucked in by as far as a society. And back when you and I were growing up, that would have been called maybe mental illness, right? Being something that you're not. Like if I wanted to be a cat right now and I start meowing, or I work, let's just say I work, and instead of giving a presentation where I'm actually speaking words, I just start meowing. I start licking myself and giving myself a bath, while I'm on the presentation. You think I'd be fired? Maybe. Possibly, right?
Yeah. If you work for Disney, maybe not.
But then here we are in a society where if I say that I'm a female, then that's accepted and that's norm. And the problem that I have with this, I mean, let's be real. Drag people have been around. I mean, since you and I, since biblical times. I never had an issue with that. But we're going beyond that. Just like with the abortion and the infanticide is going up the next level, I think this is going up the next level. And the part that has me concerned is the people who have gone through it, who realize that they were either deceived, manipulated, coerced, and now they're coming out of it. Those voices are being silenced, which we know just by what took place in 2020. People who are silenced is not something good, right?
Oh, no. Yeah, you got to hear all sides. You got to hear. Why would you not want to hear, like, if you're going to transition? Like, as a fellow citizen, I have nothing against you. I'm going to tell you what problem I have, though, in a second. But I have nothing against you. But wouldn't you want to know, like, okay, like you go online and you want to buy a vacuum. You look at the reviews. You're like, okay, why did somebody give it a 1-star review? So if you're going to you do a transformation, wouldn't you want to go look and see who gave it a 1-star review and let them speak, even if you disagree? I've bought many things that had, some bad reviews to it. But the problem I have is this is a very aggressive philosophy, because now you take that philosophy to a workplace or even just anywhere in society, and they demand that you address them how they want you to address them. Where does that happen? Where I walk up to somebody and say, I demand, and they don't say it in that way. They try to hide it behind the rainbow or whatever else. It's the same thing. You're going up to somebody and saying, I demand, I want you to call me Optimus Prime. People will look at you like, are you crazy? So they're doing the same thing. I'm walking up to you, your voice deep as hell, talking about, I want to be called Julie. And it's just, and if you don't do it, you could get fired from your job.
Yes, you'll get a call from or an email from HR. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
aggressive.
You're absolutely right. But in addition to that, it's the targeting of children also, getting them into, because they're so impressionable, right? The mutilation of children at such an early stage. And let me tell you something. The Daily Caller has a documentary out that touches on this, and I'd like to just show you the trailer on it so we can touch on that.
Yeah.
To hear that you're being lied to. The media, the medical establishment, corporate America, they tell you this story. We can turn girls into boys. Well, there's an untold story. One of heartbreak, confusion, coercion, mutilation, of childhoods lost and adults struggling to regain reality. We found those stories, the ones they don't want you to hear. The people that they refuse to give a voice to. We sat down with people who once called themselves transgender. They did the surgeries, and they regretted it. These are the marginalized voices finally heard.
I mean, I was a kid, and I shouldn't have been allowed to go through with any of this.
They recount abuse, pain, and lies sold to them by a medical establishment that profits from them being lifelong patients.
So you'll see some places that will bend the rule just the tiniest little bit in that space.
So it's a case-by-case basis.
And that's a case, all of them are a case-by-case basis.
Our mission was clear. Tell the whole story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, about the transing of America's kids.
I want to hear it. I want to hear the good. I want to hear the good too. I want to hear the good, the bad, the everything in between.
Well, I'm okay for the good for adults. I'm not okay with the good for the children because at the end of the day,
no, not for
they're
children.
They
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have that. They don't have that what's needed to make such a life-altering decision, right? And that's why this documentary is there, because these people did at one point transition, more than likely as children, like that last one that we saw. I think her name's Chloe, or her name's Chloe, and so she got duped, and so I think that. Listen, there's a lot of things kids can't do unless you're of legal age. And if you're going to transition, hey, more power to you, but I think you should be of legal age.
I think that, to me, so I have a little bit different take on the legal side of it, because I always try to say, like, are we going to try to stay together as a country or not? And we've got to figure, we can't stay together as a country with one side winning that. What if one side wins and said, well, we federally, you can't ban it. It's legal. You know, you'd probably take a constitutional amendment. And I don't even know if you could do that legislatively. But hypothetically, nobody would, that would cause a problem. And if you do it the other way and you ban it for children, that could cause a problem. And then the other part is legally is I want to be able to control what medical decisions I make with my children. So if you say you can't, even though as vile and despicable and really hard to watch it is when you look at these videos, I would rather err on the side of letting those parents make unfathomable mistakes than hurt me and my options legally. That's a little different take. A lot of people hate that take of mine. What do you think?
I just don't think that should be. There's a lot of things that kids can't. I don't think kids can get tattoos, right? Kids can't drink alcohol, for example. Kids can't gamble.
No.
Even
with parental consent. But the only difference here is the medical part for me. And I know the medical profession is a mess, even though they're licensed through the state and all that. It's still a mess. But do you see my concern if you say, hey, the government says you're the parent, but you can't do this medical thing. What about with me and my child? And I say, nah, I don't want the government to put any of that to my kid. Then they try to do the same thing to me.
The problem that I have with that is that, we're in a society where like mental illness is just out and about and everywhere. For example, there was a video, and I think I played it not too long ago, where this young girl, she victimized herself. She wanted, I guess, somebody to feel sorry for her, or she felt like she was born blind. So she poured bleach on her eyes and became blind.
I felt imprisoned by my sight. I really felt the need to be blind. People believe that blindness is a disability. I think of being empowered and being free when I think of being blind. I met a psychologist on the online group that I was a part of. I started telling him that I wanted to go blind permanently. He told me to do the research to show that I was serious, and then he would help me. I put all my time and effort into researching how to go blind.
What if somebody comes out and says, you know what? I don't like my left arm. I just want you to chop it off. I don't really need it. So mom and dad, can you go ahead and chop off my arm, amputate it? I just feel like I don't need my left arm. You see where I'm going with this?
And I say, to the other side, I always say, how is keeping it 18 or older, or how is that not a good compromise? Like, why can't we compromise on that? Why? There's some other factors going on.
Absolutely. It's not like, hey, don't do it. Hey, just be adult enough to know what you're doing when you do it. Because as a kid, you don't know, man. As a kid, you really don't know anything, man. There's lots of things that I didn't know when I was a kid. I had like this total different vision of what my adult life would be. It hasn't even happened.
Yeah, and you look at these situations, and a lot of them, it looks like the parent. There was one that was circulating online that is the scariest one I have ever seen. It's a woman and her daughter. And the woman's on doing the video and telling her daughter, tell everybody, basically, I'm paraphrasing, tell everybody how it's nice to start this process into becoming a boy. And the daughter looks like she doesn't want any part of it. And it's just, it's really tough to watch.
Now,
Yeah.
Now going back to where, again, going I want to emphasize the problem here is the kids, right? The targeting of children here. And I want to play 2 videos back to back for you. One is of a parade that took place not too long ago, where there was a message that was being chanted. So let's take a look at that.
Participants recently held a parade in New York City where they made it clear they're queer and they're coming for your children. Our first president would have swallowed his wooden teeth. No wonder parents are pushing back against gender fluidity instruction in public schools. Christians are standing up, not discriminating against gays, but against childhood indoctrination. They're also opposing unrestricted abortion, and for that, churches are under attack.
So they're not, that's not the first time I've heard that chant, and it's really concerning because, again, why are they so focused on children? That's such for me, I know why. I know why. It doesn't take a genius, right? And there's a group of gay people called Gays Against Groomers. They see it, right? So it has nothing to do with transphobia. It has nothing to do with homophobia. It has to do with a group of people that have been able to disguise themselves and hide themselves under a protected class in order for them to target children in ways that should not be targeted by an adult. Let's be clear here, okay? Regardless of whether you're heterosexual, homosexual, that is between 2 consenting adults. And the minute you start to target kids in a perverted manner, now you go into pedophilia. It doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're coming from. Correct?
Oh, absolutely. In response to that video where they were chanting, "We're coming for your kids," I told them I appreciate your honesty. At least they were honest. Like a lot of times they try to hide the stuff, and a lot of times I tell them, if you have your take, to just be proud about it. And now I can act accordingly. I know where you are. I'm honest with you on how I feel. So we can do something like, as far as like, I think, I don't want to get too far off topic, but our country, let me just say this. A country cannot coexist like this. A country cannot coexist with a group of people who openly want to go after your children, not their children, your children. It's just not feasible.
Correct. And just to prove the point that this isn't about the gay community or anything like that, because gay people, like I said, have been around for since biblical times. I've had many gay friends. I have current gay friends now, and there's a difference between being gay between 2 adults and targeting children. So I wanna show this next video of Glenn Greenwald on Megyn Kelly. Now, Glenn Greenwald, phenomenal journalist. I used to love him when he would go on Tucker, but he's gay also. So I'd like to show his take on this.
Penis showing at the pride parades, like in Seattle. Here's the video. Okay, for the listening audience, it's several men, totally naked on bikes, waving. Oh, they wear helmets, though. They cover that head. Waving. And this would be kind of funny if you didn't see many children in the other shots of the parade, Glenn. So what the hell is happening with pride?
Yeah, look, the gay and lesbian movement was an important part of my life. It's what enabled me to be legally married. It was something I supported for a long time. And the linchpin of it is something that not only I believe, but that most Americans ended up believing. There was a cultural consensus in the United States, and it was based on the principle that adults have the right to live their lives in whatever way they think will bring them the most self-actualization, and that a healthy, decent society facilitates that freedom and doesn't impede it. And if you look at polling data in 2015, most Americans favored same-sex marriage, even young conservatives, and even people had no problem with trans adults. They thought trans people should have basic legal protections. They shouldn't be kicked out of their apartments. They shouldn't be fired from their jobs. All of that has unraveled because the LGBTQIA+2 movement, or whatever acronym you prefer, has basically waged a war on that principle. There were people chanting in the streets, we're coming for your children. The San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus sung a song that said, we're coming for your children. They want to indoctrinate people's children. They're claiming that you are required to get certain trans affirming treatment for your children if they identify as trans, even if you don't want them to, and that you could be deemed guilty of child abuse and have your children taken away if you don't. The whole movement has transformed from one, we want to be left alone and live our lives the way we want, to no, actually, we want to control your lives too and make your kids think what we want them to think and even influence the way they grow up. And this has unraveled that consensus. And this is all part of it. This is a movement that was once a marginalized community in the United States, didn't have much power, had to hide, was genuinely persecuted. They now have every institution of power on their side. They know it, and it's become a bullying movement. And this idea that we're going to go out into the streets publicly in front of your kids and be fully naked and sexualize that nudity, and you can't do anything about it, is the mentality of a movement that believes, in this case, with good reason, that they are now sort of the majority, that they have the power. And they're using it in ways that are very self-destructive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I mean, I couldn't have said it better than Glenn Greenwald. And this is yet another movement, like the feminist movement, that's been hijacked and just taken off the cliff, as far as reason.
Yeah, I do have a problem with the Pride Parade in general as well. And I think a lot of people are afraid to criticize it because you can come across very easily. They could smear you as like being a bigot. And I'm done caring because I can see where this is trending, and it's trending towards the worst case scenario for somebody like me. I'm not changing my morals. What I'm seeing here is an identity very similar to what they did with Black Americans, an identity over God, family, country. And that's my philosophy. Other people don't have to have that philosophy, but even if you do a pride parade in general and you don't do any of that stuff, I still have a problem with you. You got your own flag. You don't have American flags at this pride parade. It's not celebrating me. When I say God, family, country, that celebrates you, whether you're gay or not. But with the way you're doing it, it doesn't celebrate the country. You're doing some type of offset thing within the group, and that's why it's easily manipulated and taken over.
That's a great point. Never thought about that with the whole flag representation. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. So let me ask you this, Osiris. Let's say if I go to a movie theater, right, and I go to the counter and I say, hi, I'd like an admission for a child, please. One child. That person's probably going to look at me and go, sir, you're not a child. I can't sell you that. But wait a minute, why can't I? I feel like I'm 5. They're going to tell, well, that doesn't matter. You're clearly not 5. Your license probably says that you're somewhere in your 40s, right? And I go, but wait a minute. So let me make sure I understand this. I can go to your bathroom. I can go to the female's bathroom because I feel like a woman, but I can't pay for a child admission because I feel like a child? Can you make that make sense to me, Osiris?
You cannot. They're making up their own rules, and it always comes back to their group feeling like they got power and then the government feeling like they got power. It always goes back to that. So anything, no matter how circular the argument or ridiculous it is, it always goes back to them having power.
Yep, absolutely. So when it involves money, that's where the feelings kind of stop, right? When it involves money. So let me ask you this. If I could change my gender as society has placed it, and I think you did a video on this a couple of months ago, as a matter of fact, can I change my race? I mean, I've done a DNA test, and there's some African in me. It's about 12%, somewhere in that range. So I would like to identify as Black. I doubt anybody would agree with me.
Carlos, my Black brother, my Black brother, Carlos, let's go.
So can I change my race?
In their world, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The slavery, they're doing the slavery, trying to see, not slavery, but the reparations in California. Part of the language says Black, or that you identified as Black for like 15 years or something like that. They literally say identify as Black in the proposed legislation.
Man, I grew up on hip hop. I grew up on rap. I grew up on reggae. I had braids in my hair in high school.
Well, Carlos, I would give you my Black card or something like that. I don't have one, though. They took mine, so I can't help you, bro.
So here's what's interesting. PragerU did a video where one of their people went on campus and asked this question, and I'd like to play that for you. Let's see what the leftists say.
You can't become something that is recognized off of skin color if you weren't that skin color your whole
Right,
life.
because it's biological. Do you think that people who claim transracial are making a mockery of real black people?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about woman face. Have you guys heard the term woman face?
No.
Have you heard this term? So this is men who identify as women, and then they benefit socially and financially from many cases. Do you guys know Dylan Mulvaney?
No.
So he transitioned, and after he transitioned to a woman, he has millions of dollars in brand deals. You have Leah Thomas, who has William Thomas, ranked very low on the swimmer scoreboards. After transitioning, was #1 in the country.
It's bullshit to me that you reap benefits for something you're not.
I think that is a completely different story. Being transgender is something where you can genuinely be born with different biological features or whatever, and that doesn't contribute to gender or like societal norms at all. I think those are two completely different things.
Is woman face offensive?
I don't think that's woman face. I think those are people who were born in the wrong bodies, who are becoming themselves.
So if you can identify with a different gender, why can't you identify with a different race?
The biological side of it, because race has no biological connections whatsoever. It's purely based off of physical appearances.
I just asked you if it was biological. You said yes.
Is recognized off of skin color if you weren't that skin color your whole
Right,
life.
because it's biological.
Or I mean, sex has biological backings, but gender is not. Gender is a spectrum.
Why is it socially acceptable to be transgender, but it's not socially acceptable to be transracial?
I think that's like they're very different things. I think that like I don't know how to phrase this in a way, but I would say like is.
I wouldn't say I'm educated enough to have the proper definition of like separating the two.
But what about like how Rachel Dolezal, she said that she was born in the wrong body, that she really is black. Why is that any different than being born in the wrong body and being a woman or a man?
I don't know how to explain it, but I know that it is.
I feel like people, they have the freedom to do what they want.
Is that an endorsement of transracialism?
Kind of got me, huh?
Do you see the hypocrisy here?
I do see the hypocrisy, but I don't think the hypocrisy is like, I'm not trying, how do I phrase this?
That one girl had the Mitch McConnell moment where she kind of froze up and she was like, I don't know what to say.
All I saw was a lot of goalposts moving. I saw a lot of double standards, a lot of contradictions in that, and overall lack of explanation because it just doesn't logically make sense what they're saying.
There's no way to explain it. Rachel Dolezal is still to this day walking around claiming that she's black.
I know that's the video that I was talking about, the one that you did.
Oh, yeah, you were about to play.
Yeah.
Yep, I did. Yep.
So I guess if you're a prominent Democrat, then you can. I guess.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, look at Elizabeth Warren. Isn't she Native American?
The left doesn't like to talk about that too much because that's an embarrassing moment,
dude.
Especially with the affirmative action stuff that came out because she filled that out to get into school, right?
Absolutely, into college.
Yeah.
So listen, I'm more black than she is Native Indian.
Yeah.
I'm between that 7-12% spectrum. I can't remember. I did a DNA test and it was one or the other number. I can't remember which one of the two. But it's hysterical. So the last segment that I want to touch on is systemic racism. Like we've mentioned before, you and I have grown up in the 90s, right? You know, we listened to really, really similar music, and this whole thing about racism and everything being about race and so on and so forth, it wasn't there. It was like we had hit such a unification between all the different cultures, all the different races, right? Hip hop was on the scene. Everybody wanted to listen to hip hop, and the fashion was there, and so on and so forth. And yet now we have, here's the funny part, we've got successful black people telling regular black people that the system is against them, that there's no way that they can get.
Yeah, it's hard to see it. Yeah.
Well, what
That's
are your thoughts
literally
on
what's happening. That's literally what's happening. And there's the group I call them I don't call them, they're known as the Talented 10th. That's an old phrase. And they take like you said, these figures who have influence, who are black, and they make them all have the same mentality, or basically what they do is if you don't have the same mentality, you don't get any more reach or anything like that. And they are the ones that tell everybody else you're a victim. And I've chatted with some of them, and I said, wait, you worked hard to get where you were. Like, I don't hear you talking about that. Even if you want to talk about victimhood, I don't hear you talking about the other part as much. And they don't have a reply to it. It's a philosophy that is insulting to me. It is insulting to me that, for example, a black man or male dies at the hand of a cop. And then I look at the story and I see they shot a weapon, they were fighting the cops, and it was self-defense. And I'm like, you wouldn't tell your child to do any of that. So why are you trying to turn me into an infant like I should be upset with somebody who had consequences for their actions? So it does get me heated with what's happening with this. And
it's such a bad lie because we've got literally millions of immigrants from all over the country, but you've got, let's just focus on, since we're talking about black, let's focus on immigrants from Haiti and the African continent, right? Like Nigeria or whatever. You've got these people coming. If the system was built against them, why would they even bother coming?
Yeah, I've never heard anybody address that.
I mean, it doesn't make sense that you're coming to a place where the system tells you that you can't achieve anything, that you might as well just stay where you're at if that's the case.
Yeah, there's a tension with African, people who have immigrated from Africa, and not just Africa. My parents are Jamaican. That they come to America, and the black Americans who have been here, there's a tension at times because their mentality is different, and there's no right or wrong. I'm not saying that the black Americans, I don't agree with them, but it's just an opinion. So the opinions clash, where you see the victimhood from some of the same people that grew up through the era that we did. I don't know what happened, but they flipped. Because, back in the day, it was more like, let's celebrate my culture. That's why you had, shows that you could label as black shows and stuff like that. Now you've got it where it's almost like the black shows are done to make a statement or like an action against people. It's not as much as a celebration of like a different world Cosby Show. So the Cosby Show was just a celebration of family. And that was a great show back in the day. And now it's more, the Cosby Show wouldn't fly now because it's not attacking societal norms. That's a whole different thing.
Correct. And you're absolutely 100% right. And I think, we talked about this before. I saw the shift. I saw the change when Obama came onto the scene. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry who that offends. Actually, I'm not sorry. But that's just a reality because, you know what? We didn't have this stuff about race and this and that and all this garbage that we've got going on. And as a matter of fact, and you pointed it out, immigrants that come from other countries like Jamaica and Africa or the African continent, right? They tend to do better financially than a percentage of native-born blacks. Why is that? And I think you hit it on the nail, right? It's the mentality specifically for the leftists, right? Because when we talk about people like Larry Elder, Candace Owens, Ben Carson, right? They don't buy into that, right? So it's definitely a leftist mentality.
Yeah, it's a very sick. It's a sick mentality when you define yourself by your skin color. But then somebody, like you said, Ben Carson, doesn't agree with you politically. He never disrespected you. Ben Carson has never disrespected any, leftist black person. So why would they look at him like he's some type of animal? And they don't call him black. They don't consider him black. Back in the 90s, that's not how it was. I don't know what you said. Obama, yeah, I did flip. It just happened so slowly. And when Obama won in 2008. It kind of felt good. It was like a celebration, and then it quickly fell apart.
It's very tough. Let me play you one last video, and this is from Larry Elder, and this is really, really just, the tactics that the left uses is very, very strategic, and if you're not paying attention, you will get sucked into it. So, last video.
Months ago, and I want to get your thoughts on them. You point blank said you don't believe there's systemic racism in America. Just listen to these stats.
Anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Black Americans are underrepresented in high-paying jobs compared to white and Asian Americans, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median incomes of black families is almost $30,000 less than white families, and overall poverty rate for black families is more than double white families. Black mortgage applicants are denied for loans more often than white, Hispanic, and Asian applicants, per the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And the U.S. Census Bureau in 2021 found that 37.9% of white Americans 25 and older have college degrees, compared to 28.1% of black Americans in that same age range. So when you hear those stats, you don't believe that systemic racism is in America anymore. So what would you attribute these numbers to?
Oh, for crying out loud. Disparities do not mean systemic racism. Disparities mean disparities. For example, a black married man has the same unemployment rate as do whites. What is stopping a black person from going to a college or university? The things that you mentioned are disparities. Tell me how these disparities are because of racism. You mentioned mortgage applications. It is true that blacks are turned down at a higher rate for mortgages than whites. It's also true that Asians are turned down less often than whites. How do you explain that? How do you explain that Chinese Americans who were victimized by racism, in fact, they were the first nationality to be excluded by the Chinese Immigration Act. How do you explain that they have a higher net income than do whites? How do you explain that Japanese Americans have a higher household income than do whites? How do you explain that Korean Americans have a higher net income than do whites? How do you explain Nigerian Americans have a higher net income, household income than do whites? These are matters of behavior, matters of choices. There's nothing stopping anybody black from succeeding in America. There are think tanks on the left, like the Brookings Institution, and on the right, like the American Enterprise Institute. And they both give the same formula for success. Finish high school. Don't have a kid before you're 20 years old. Get married first. Get a job. Keep that job. Don't quit it until you get another job. And I would add one more thing, and that is avoid the criminal justice system. You do those things, you will not be poor.
So how do you explain these disparities? You said disparities are disparities. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you decide not to go to college, then you say that black people are not in college. If you make a decision not to do something that results in you having less income, how do you call that some sort of systemic racism? You might want to make an argument that people ought to change their behavior, that there should be a greater emphasis on education. For example, look at a graph of how much homework an average black kid spends in high school per night compared to the average amount of homework a Hispanic kid does, compared to the average homework a white kid does, compared to the average homework an Asian American kid does. And it's night and day when you compare what blacks do per night on homework versus whites or versus Asians. If you argue that there is a relationship between how hard you work and results, it seems to me you ought to be talking about why people aren't working harder rather than criticizing the disparate results that stem from that.
So are you saying that the reason why more black people...
I don't know why. Honestly, Brittany, I don't know why this is complicated. What I'm saying is, in America, if you decide that you want to work hard, go to high school, graduate, and then go to a college or a junior college first, and then graduate, nothing will stop you. I mean, virtually every Fortune 500 company has some sort of diversity consultant or some sort of outreach program. They're all looking for to diversify their workforce. What's the evidence that corporate America somehow is discriminating against qualified black people? I went to law school, graduated in 1977. My roommate was an engineering student. He majored in computer engineering. He was recruited like a rock star. He was recruited like a high school prep star. He could do anywhere he wanted to. He could go anywhere he wanted to work. I ended up working at TRW, had a very long career. He had a study mate who was also black, and they both majored in computer engineering. And the study mate went to Procter & Gamble, had a very long, successful career. Corporations were lining up for them. Corporations are looking for qualified people, particularly people who are in STEMs, science, technology, engineering, and math. These are the high demand areas, and unfortunately, a large percentage of blacks aren't majoring in those areas. So if you're not doing the kinds of things that corporate America wants, don't be shocked when corporate America doesn't give you a job. I don't understand why this is complicated.
Do you think it's an equal playing field for all Americans, regardless of race, then, to achieve that American dream?
Brittany, it's not an equal playing field in your own house. I don't know if you have any siblings, but I doubt that your siblings are equally successful, even though you had the same parents but at the same schools. What makes you think that we're supposed to have equal outcomes? Is the NBA equal? 85, 95% or so of the players are black. I'd say the same thing about the NFL. Baseball has a substantial percentage of Latin ball players. How do you explain that? Is there some sort of systemic racism against white people who don't make it to the NBA? If you do not embrace math, you don't embrace science, you don't embrace the higher paying careers, you're not going to have a higher paid career.
Dude, it's common sense. It's common sense.
Oh, Larry Elder is so good. That's why he got left out of the first Republican debate because he has the statistics in his head. I don't have that recall. I've got to look it up, and that really helps a lot. Like she went on her little thing going through her statistics, and he's like, wait a second, and rattled off his, and that just put water all over what she was trying to do, and it's done. Impressive. I'm a big fan of Larry Elder, and I like to. He used to do the radio show. Brandon Tatum took it over. I respect how he handed it over. He's right on point. What can you argue there against what he said?
Nothing. It's common sense, and you're right. I love Larry Elder too. I started listening back in 2016, and I'm hooked on him. Well, always have been. But it is common sense. Look, society is building a norm where you don't have any like personal responsibility. He's right. Like if I decide to, like hang out with my friends versus studying and passing my grades, right? Then am I going to be shocked when I fail or I don't have a high GPA? If I decide, and I did do this, and this is me, right? I had a kid right at 20, right? And so I had to drop out of college and start working full time in order for me to support that. It wasn't part of the plan, and I decided to move in with his mom before being financially set and going through the things, everything that he explained there. I wound up hurting myself. Thankfully, it's not the end, right? Thankfully, I've been able to pick myself up, and I work at a really good corporation now. But I probably could have gotten there sooner, or I could be at a higher position. You know what I'm saying? All I did was delay and set myself back. But everything that he mentioned there, it's irrelevant of your skin color. It's personal choice.
Yeah, I feel like the victimhood mentality, it only really becomes a problem to me when it stops, self-reflection. If you can't be introspective and say, okay, no matter what color my skin is, what's the decision that I made today? And that it comes across as that, even from, like you said, in schooling and deciding to have sex protected or not, and all those different decisions, that's not skin color. That's you made a decision. Absolutely, my friend. Well, here are my final thoughts, and I want to get your final thoughts. Society continues to find new ways to make this world like a Twilight Zone, man. I find it hard to understand or comprehend, most of the things that are happening right now. I feel like at some point we went into like an alternate reality where logical things just stop and reason are rare now. And to be quite honest with you, I wish I had a positive outlook and I could say things like, I think eventually things will go back to normal, but sadly that's not the truth. I feel like an ominous feeling things will progress towards insanity more and more as we go along. What are your final thoughts? Yes, it will, but then on the other side of that, I do believe in the cyclical nature of life, and I think that the hard times will make strong men as we get there, but it's gonna be insane. But after that, so the whole reason I got behind the mic, I'm not making any money off of this. The whole reason was just to get my voice out there, and I care about the future for my kids. And I think the First Amendment is the most powerful. That's why it's the first. And at the end of the day, they're trying to destroy the Constitution. Everything we talked about today has been used as a weapon to change the Constitution, change society, destroy Western culture. And I like hanging around with people who want to preserve that. We can make it anew, but the core of it has to be preserved. And that's there's always going to be 5 people in a cave somewhere who believe in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. They cannot stop it. It's impossible. And I'm a full new topic on here that we haven't talked about. Artificial intelligence, to me, is going to be the tool of the revolution. So I am long-term, I am white-pilled, but short-term, we're going to get crazy.
Well, listen, man, thanks so much for joining me on this episode. I really appreciate having you. I really appreciate your insight, and I'm glad to have you here, brother.
Appreciate you, Carlos. Thank you.
All right, everybody else, take care. Good night. God bless. Thank you so much.